Story 1. I stopped drinking alcohol when I was 30. I passed out on my buddy's couch and woke up covered in vomit. I thought this would be a hilarious story when I was 20, but now I'm 30, and it's pathetic. And I never drank again. It's been over 10 years. Story 2. My issue is that when I drink, I don't want to or don't know how to stop. I was tired of feeling terrible the next day, experiencing anxiety from the hangover, and how much weight it caused me to gain from drinking so often. I am almost 600 days sober. Story 3. Life pro tip. If someone in your group does not drink alcohol, do not ask them why. For most people, it might be a benign question, but for some, it could be due to a negative event that they would rather not be reminded of. I learned this the hard way. Sorry, Dan. I hope you are doing better. Story 4. It is a carcinogen. Your odds of getting several different types of cancer go up. For head and neck cancers, the odds increase by between 60 and 200%. For colorectal and gastric cancers, it is less substantial yet still a strong increase. Why bother? Story 5. I quit because the drawbacks far outweigh the benefits. Getting to be more sociable and talkative for a few hours is not worth the crippling headaches, excessive urination, vomiting, and ear ringing. Story 6. I'm a real alcoholic. Been a long road to hoe, lots of hospitalizations, incarceration, homelessness, and wreckage inflicted on those closest to me. I stand today a sober man since October 28, 2022. Story 7. My best friend from high school was drunk when his uncle died. He had problems before then, but that night he disappointed his mother in a way he couldn't fix. So he quit drinking and got help. I never had a drinking problem, and I can say that honestly. My wife got sick with cancer. Our kids were young. I remembered my friend and decided then that I would never be impaired. She was sick for 3 years and passed away 11 years ago. I've had a few beers since then, when my kids weren't around. Less than a case, I would say. If I were to start up again, it would concern my family, and it's not worth it to me to disappoint them. Story 8. I don't like the taste. Also, I don't get a nice happy buzz like most people. I get nausea, a headache, vertigo, and acid reflux, all within minutes of a single sip. Story 9. My stomach has decided it's in the list of things I can't digest correctly anymore, including refined sugar, numerous vegetables, and anything remotely spicy. Story 10. I like having a clear head. Also, call it petty, but at 15 I said I was not interested in drinking alcohol to an aunt. They responded, I bet you will when you're older. And I am committed to proving them wrong. I am now 31 and still have not touched the stuff. Story 11. Alcohol has a negative effect on nearly every type of cell in the human body. The objective negative consequences far outweigh any subjective perceived positives. Story 12. A couple of reasons. 1. I'm one of the kids that got the message early on about the dangers of alcohol, so I elected early on to not touch the stuff. I don't mind others drinking at all, as long as they are responsible. My mother is a cheap drunk, in that she gets very silly with not a lot of alcohol in her system, and I don't want to risk having inherited that trait and embarrassing myself. Story 13. I have drug abuse and alcoholism coming at me from both sides of my family. My parents divorced when I was around 5. I saw my dad every other weekend. When I was around 10, during a gift opening on Christmas Eve, there was a bad night where he drunkenly got in a fight with his dad, then his brother-in-law, then tried to drive my stepmom and me home, and lastly chased my stepmom around the house once we got home. My biological mom got full custody of me shortly thereafter. He then called me and told me, if you don't keep in contact with me, I'm going to forget you. That ended up being the last we ever spoke. About 25 years later, I learned that my father drank himself to paralysis and later death. In the late 90s, my mom's own drug addiction was becoming a problem. There are other family members with addictions to one or the other, but you get the point. As I grew up, I just decided I wasn't going to be that to my wife and kids. So, I've just had no desire to do those things. Reese's Cups, however, the struggle is real. Story 14. In my opinion, it doesn't taste good. It doesn't matter what I drink that has alcohol in it. I don't like the feeling of getting drunk. I don't like the feeling of being hungover. and I'm required to drive every day, so even if I wanted to, I couldn't drink. Story 15. I am bipolar, and the depression hangover is insane. I am not giving away my serotonin for free. I also have irritable bowel syndrome and get crazy bowel movements and gas after. I love the taste of some wines and beers, so I just take a sip here and there. Story 16. I had to reevaluate my relationship with alcohol once I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I realized I was using it mostly during episodes. I was also in a relationship with an alcoholic for over 10 years. I slowed down a lot in 2023 when I left my ex and started bipolar medication. I only drank a handful of times. My last and only drink of the year was at my work Christmas party on December 13th, 2024. I do not plan on having another. Story 17. 1. I am Muslim. I want to remember my experiences. Can make you do dangerous things. It smells like pee. It is very unhealthy and toxic. I do not like the idea of drinking to be social. If your friends need to drink to be likable, you need new friends. I do not like to do things just because everyone else does them. Story 18. I did through my 20s. Then I started getting horrible anxiety. At 30, I promised myself I would quit after one final drunken New Year's, and that's exactly what I did. The anxiety, the hangovers, the horrible social choices, the destruction of your health? I'm good. I still drink non-alcoholic beers and liquors at the house. That's it. Story 19. There is nothing appealing about it. It is basically drinking poison that makes you feel like someone else, makes you dumber, and makes you forget things. Story 20. Nothing appealing about it. You get all bloated, sick, and hungover, which takes an entire day to recover from. Marijuana is my go-to vice to relax. It's easy, safer, and has no hangovers. Story 21. It is literally a systemic poison. The fact that we enjoy some of the lighter effects of being poisoned makes it no less of a poison. To your body, it is no different than drinking small amounts of drain cleaner. Story 22. My wife is a recovering alcoholic and has been sober for 10 years. Right when she got sober, I removed any alcohol in the house to keep her from being tempted. After a year or two, it kind of morphed into I don't drink, not just for that reason alone, as I started not liking the feeling of the carbonation and the hangovers seemed to last 2 weeks. Now my wife can be around alcohol as she isn't tempted anymore, but I still don't feel like drinking. I do take gummies now as there is no hangover or loss of control like being drunk, and I can get the gummies sent to my door from 3Chi. Since this is Reddit, I will also say that I'm not sponsored by them, just really like their products. Story 23. I am bipolar, and overconsumption of alcohol can make me episodic, even on medication. It is uncertain whether you end up fine or get triggered into mania or depression. Story 24. Because I'm currently at work, give me a couple of hours. Jokes aside, I'm glad to see so many people who have had problems in the comments doing so well being sober. Story 25. Childhood trauma from alcoholic caregivers. I am afraid of being anything like them. Plus, genetics play a role in addictions or addictive behaviors. It is just not worth the risk. Story 26. I never was into drinking, but the biggest reason was because I suffer from ulcerative colitis, which is a form of inflammatory bowel disease. Alcohol is one of the worst things for my gut because it destroys my microbiome, which keeps me from flaring up and, God forbid, could lead to me getting my colon removed. Also, I've been surrounded by numerous people who get drunk and act like fools or jerks. Story 27. Stopped in November of last year. I was starting to see my control slip. I have lost family to it, and when I saw their patterns manifesting in my life, it was time to call it. Also, the book, The Easy Way, was helpful in changing my frame of mind. Story 28. Caught long COVID, and now I'm allergic to it. Go figure. I wasn't a hard drinker before. I maybe drank 5 times a year, and it was a beer or cocktail. Now I just stick to the 0% stuff. Story 29. Watching a late-stage alcoholic bleeding out of her eyes, ears, nose, mouth, vagina, rectum, and urethra. Esophagus varices blown out. blood overflowing off the bed onto the floor in puddles, with her family saying, "She didn't drink that much today. It was only wine for Thanksgiving." It wasn't just Thanksgiving, my friend. Story 30. Do not like the taste, too expensive, bad side effects. Even 2 bottles of beer or glasses of wine give me a headache, and I never get a buzz. I just feel icky. Story 31. It feels like a biological roller coaster, which is why I chose not to drink. Either the dehydration or the vinegar it oxidizes to, combined with the sleep disruption of drinking to completion, used to make it a one-off thing to do maybe every week or month. Now I don't care. I'll drink every day for a year and stop on a dime for the sake of it. It actually seems like sleep deprivation is worse than alcohol for me now. Story 32. I grew up in a family full of drinkers. I saw what it did to them, the choices they made while drinking, and the foolishness that resulted from those terrible, drunken decisions enough times to know that I just don't want any part of that. It was a little isolating growing up because they would hold a bunch of parties and family gatherings where alcohol was abundant. After going to a handful of those in my early 20s because I didn't want to be that one cousin who never shows, I just stopped going because it was just an excuse for them to get drunk and do and say foolish things with impunity. I don't want that. I don't need that. I love my family, but I don't love their choice of pastime. Story 33. I did socially for over a decade, and then once COVID started and I couldn't go out to drink with my friends, I decided to quit for a while. Now it's been going on 5 years since I've had a drink. I realized I didn't need it and I didn't want to do it anymore. Story 34. It's not appealing to me, and I have a 50-50 chance of being an angry rampage drunk, like on my mother's side, or being a goofy, fall asleep in a pile of vomit drunk, like on my father's side, and neither of those options are appealing to me. Story 35. I stopped for a little over a year due to a new medicine. I am no longer on that medicine and plan on drinking again. Not anywhere near the same level though, because, good gods, I did not have a handle on that. Or maybe too many handles. Story 36. I was never a heavy drinker. I have always had a 1 drink per hour rule at an absolute maximum, never drank outside of social situations, and have never been anything beyond a little tipsy. I'm not a complete abstainer now, but it's very rare for me to be in a situation where I feel like it's worth it. It's a maybe once in a while thing that I enjoy the flavor of, but unless there is some compelling reason, such as having a shared experience with someone trying a new or interesting beer, simply enjoying the flavor of something doesn't make it worth the health impacts, both just the calories as well as the increasingly clear evidence of negative effects from any amount of alcohol. Story 37. My dad is a former alcoholic and almost died. My childhood was not good because of it. I have little ones and do not feel like dealing with a hangover because I cannot be the best version of myself for them when they need me. I do not want them to see me under the influence like that. I have a weak stomach for many reasons. Story 38. It's addicting. It's hard to stop once I start. Trying to stay away from it. Also, it seems that once you get addicted, you become less active due to hangovers and other things, eat more often, and gain weight. Story 39. I watched my dad drink all the time. He was always drunk. I grew up drinking in 7th grade because it was the thing to do. I drank all through my teens and early to mid-20s. I realized I had a lot of built-up anger and resentment. I drank until I was blacked out and had no self-control. I had kids and realized I needed to break the cycle and be a role model. I had an unhealthy relationship with it that drove me deep into depression and suicidal thoughts. I refused to acknowledge I had a problem. I stopped and haven't looked back. Although over the last 2 years I've had a couple of drinks but always regret it. I've just come to terms that we aren't meant to be, and that's okay. Story 40. I do not completely abstain, but I am just really not interested. I did not have anything alcoholic until I was 24 or so. I am 48 now. I have maybe 1 or 2 drinks a year, and that is honestly pushing it. Story 41. I was probably a functional alcoholic for the better part of 10 years, from my mid-30s to my mid-40s. I gained a ton of weight, but the part that really finally scared me away from it was realizing that I could consume ridiculous amounts of alcohol and start feeling lousy before I ever even got the buzz. That was when I realized that it simply was not worth it. Story 42. Waste of money. From birth to twice my age, he would scold and drag me to the pub or any place he could drink. Southeast Asia was pretty lax with age rules at that time, and he would drink nonstop until morning, just wasting my time. Even in college, I couldn't properly do my work because he kept dragging me around. He took my mother's family's money just to open a pub with a friend and ended up spending all of it on drinking. He took my mother's money again and did the same. Alcohol will be my forever enemy. Story 43. I take a lot of medications that affect my liver. And while I occasionally share a beer with Mr. Pullet, drinking more than a couple of units a month would be really bad for me. I am, however, totally addicted to fizzy water now. Story 44. It used to be fun. New discussions and experiences were had. Around age 30, drunk conversations became boring, reminiscing about past fun or gossip. There was no more enjoyment in drinking. Story 45. It has led to some bad decisions and bad situations that outweighed any perceived benefit. Sure, it can be fun, but at a cost. Health is my #1 priority. Making good decisions is part of that. Story 46. I used to drink socially and enjoyed joining friends for a happy hour drink or a drink with dinner out at a restaurant. But my hangovers, oh my God. Even one drink gives me a banging headache the next day and I feel sluggish. My body does not like it. I just gave it up altogether about 15 years ago. Story 47. Honestly, it tastes awful and feels awful in the moment. Most of the time, you don't remember it, and it feels awful afterwards when you're sober. I really hate the feeling of losing any amount of control, and alcohol is just that in a bottle or can or whatever. I'll have a drink for holidays like whiskey at New Year's, but other than that, it just feels so gross and awful.